podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Hello everyone, I'm Chris Wynn and welcome to How We're the podcast. And if you normally kick back on a Sunday and listen to our Sunday supplement to go back through the match in detail following our initial reaction, well, this is that, but it's just Tuesday. So pretend you have that Sunday morning feeling because it doesn't happen very often that we can talk about Sunderland winning by 3-0 in the Premier League. So we gather today to analyse Sunderland's 3-0 win against a pretty awful Burnley side, which means we've now bounced back from all of our 6 defeats this season with a home win, as well as going 12 unbeaten at home, which is all impressive. And we'll get into that, I'm sure. And we'll also get into the transfer window now as well, because it's all closed. And there was a little bit of late business done that we can talk about. So we'll get into all of that because with me today, we have a good friend of the podcast from the Sunderland Echo. We have Phil Smith. Hello, Phil.
Morning. How you doing? Thanks for having me.
I'm doing good, thank you. And it was, we're talking about almost a routine win. It's almost like we've got used to a bit of drama at the stadium, and it was almost too routine, wasn't it?
Yeah, very, very surreal to watch Sunderland coast their way to a 3-0 win in the Premier League, isn't it? I think it'll take me a long, long time to get bored of it, put it that way. But yeah, I know we beat West Ham 3-0, didn't we? But because it was the opening day, it felt a bit different. This did just feel like a, good Premier League side beats poor Premier League side, which is an absolutely lovely thing to say when it's us on the right side of it, compared to last time we were in this league. So yeah, it was almost too easy at times, wasn't it? It was a very unfamiliar feeling, but a very welcome one.
Yeah, well, that's it. Well, just before we get into the football too much, Phil, I want to talk about your upcoming show because you've got one planned and there's some tickets left as well.
Yeah, so anyone who may or may not have seen my little YouTube videos, we're doing a live show of On the Whistle. Nick Barnes is joining me Pop Rex tomorrow night. So there's still a few tickets left. So if anyone is at a loose end and fancies coming down tomorrow night, you can find the ticket link on all my socials. So it's a tenner, but you get a pint, which I think is a pretty reasonable deal. And Sunderland chat and quiz. So yeah, if anyone's listening and they're at a loose end tomorrow night, come down and get your ticket. It would be great to see everyone.
For a tenner? You get all that for a tenner?
I know, right? Yeah. Thank you. Your bribe's in the post. Thank you very much. That was exactly the level of excitement I needed. Thank you. It's a decent deal. I do think it's a decent deal. So.
It is. I take the kids to McDonald's and I spend 30 quid before I've even bloody realised what I've done. But just out of interest, what type of pie, Phil?
All your classics is how I would describe it.
All your classics.
All your classics. Yeah, there'll be a small selection. I don't want to oversell, but there will be a small selection of your classic flavours.
I don't think you can oversell a pie unless they're doing loads of free bentos ones or something like that.
Probably.
But yeah, so just you said tomorrow, so just in case people are listening to it on Wednesday, Wednesday,
yes. Wednesday the 4th of February, yeah.
Okay, so and just in case you mentioned where you can get tickets?
Anywhere, any of my socials, you'll find the link pinned to my profile. So X, Blue Sky, whatever you use. So hopefully be fairly easy to find.
Good stuff. Well, if you're local at a loose end for a tenner, you're not going to get anything better. Certainly on a Wednesday night. I mean, I'm in shock because everything costs so much now that you can still get stuff like that for a tenner. But that's brilliant. So get along to that if you're a loose end on Wednesday night, like we said. But we'll get back into your Monday, Phil, because we just touched on it just before we started recording. I mean, I didn't realise until you said it, but second year in a row that we've had a game on the same day as the transfer window closed.
Yeah, and it was yesterday had a slightly better outcome transfer-wise because from memory, although someone may be listening, correct me, I think last year pretty much all we had was Tommy Watson not going to Brighton in the end. Then, of course, he did go about 2 months later. Obviously, yesterday it was nice to kind of, something to get a pretty big deal in the bag at the end. But yeah, so it was Middlesbrough last year. Obviously, one of the best games of the season. So yeah, I'm slightly running on fumes this morning and just powering through with caffeine. But obviously, I'm a bit knackered, but at the same time, it's what it's all about, isn't it? A bit of exciting Sunderland in the Premier League, doing business, winning games at the stadium. Like it's all good vibes. To be fair, I'll take it.
Yeah. So just out of interest, from a journalist point of view, on a transfer deadline day, what is your routine? I mean, how do you keep up to date? I mean, have you got people that within the club that you're constantly onto, just saying, is there any update? Are you asking the club
Yeah.
officially? I mean, what's your day like in trying to get the information? Because now you're fighting with social media, aren't you?
Yeah, it's tricky. I think it's probably a combination of both. To what you said, I think generally speaking, you have contacts in the club and you have contacts in the game, if that makes sense. So you probably try to speak to both really to piece together what's happening. It's really challenging, and especially as you go up the levels, to be honest, because these deals are fewer people know about them. It's a much more kind of like closed circle, if you like, and for very obvious reasons when you look at kind of the finances involved and the risk of other clubs getting wind of it and what have you. So yeah, generally speaking, you're kind of trying to put pieces of the puzzle together from speaking to people you might know at the club. Probably more so, to be honest, people just more broadly in the game, who might be more willing to talk about what's happening at Sunderland, obviously. And then when you feel like you're kind of in a position, you can go and sort of speak to the club. But yeah, it is a frantic one. It is challenging. It's probably not it's not my favorite part of the job, to be honest. But it's nice at the moment when Sunderland are signing kind of exciting players and the vibes are good.
Yeah. I mean, when you say that, not your favourite part of the job, is that just because it's almost too, it gets to the point where it's too gossipy and it's all just stories flying around, you're trying to work out which one's actually got some truth in it?
Yeah, an element of that. And I think it's things change so quickly that sometimes you can be like trying to get at the bottom of something for an incredibly long time, and then it's just completely changed again by the time you do. And I know some people get an absolute buzz off that, and I really admire the people. Don't need to name names, but the people you see on social media who are brilliant at doing it. I just think I've got a lot of admiration for that. But I much prefer the games, and I much prefer, sitting down the next morning, like we are now, and getting through the guts of it. But everyone's different. Do you know what I mean? There's so many different kind of roles within the industry, I've got so much admiration for the guys who clearly just kind of live off getting these stories and putting them out there and do it like a genuinely brilliant job in terms of how accurate they're able to get it as well. It's an incredible skill that I've got the utmost respect for them.
You should have been on our transfer window room 101 that we did earlier this week to get all our transfer window pet hates out in the open. But you just on one thing again the window closing on the same day as a game or even an hour before the game, because I did the preview for the game on our website and I had my tinfoil hat on, Phil, because I was trying to imagine if this was, say, Manchester City versus Arsenal on the Monday night. I mean, I imagine Pep and Arteta would have something to say about the window closing an hour before kickoff. And was it, I don't want to bring up conspiracy theories, but do you think maybe lowly Sunderland against lowly Burnley was picked especially for that they wouldn't kick up a stink?
I don't know really, because the bigger clubs tend not to really do a huge amount on deadline day. And I think the other aspect of it now is the one thing I would say is, I honestly don't know your point, but the one thing I would say is like, I genuinely don't think it could have happened 15, 20 years ago, because in those days, managers were doing all the transfers. I genuinely think it would have been something where it's like, no, you literally can't do that because we can't manage the game and do the transfer window. I think head coaches, as the parlance is now, have such a limited actual kind of direct role. Yes, they watch the clips and they give an opinion on the player, but they have so little actual role in doing the transfers that I think is something that's probably, it's not a good thing, but it's probably become possible because of that. I mean, you'll have seen the quick quotes from Liam Rosenior over the weekend, basically saying he only comes in right at the very end of the process with Chelsea. So yeah, it's a funny one. I think it just reflects the way the game has completely changed because, back in Peter Reid's day, I literally cannot see how you could have a scenario like that. So it's really interesting. I think it just reflects the way how quickly and how much the game has changed, even from when I started doing the job. Like 9 years ago, it's crazy how much it's changed in that sense.
Yeah, it was good to see Peter Reid in the crowd as well with
it was looking an absolute $1 million as per usual as well. Yeah, love to see it.
Absolutely brilliant. I mean, but just building off that a second, because obviously Regis Labris isn't, he likes getting involved. He is heavily involved. Of course, it does go up the food chain in terms of the targets, but he is involved in that. And, it doesn't seem fair when there's a couple of things to it that maybe the other clubs can react to if they've got a big injury over the weekend. They've got 48 hours to react to it. And, if someone does suddenly come available, let's say 6 o'clock, an hour before kickoff, and is offered to Sunderland, then, it's difficult then for Regis Labris because he's in the middle of preparing for kickoff against Burnley.
Yeah, it's a really fair point. I suppose from a club's perspective, you want to be in a position where you're not kind of trying to get new information a couple of hours before the window, I guess, aren't you? I suppose it's probably changed a little bit as well certainly from the League One eras, where I'm not sure you can do a Premier League deal in that time frame, if that makes sense. Whereas you probably could get someone in on loan in League One in a couple of hours. And so I think it's probably something that someone would be looking to avoid anyway. But it's a really fair point you raise. It's definitely not a good healthy thing for the game. But to be fair, I would just do away with transfer windows anyway. That would suit me just fine.
I'll tell you what, you're speaking our language. You should have definitely been on our Room 101 during the week because that took up most of the conversation. And speaking of that, we've had a part-timer join us late today. We've got Gav Mendes. Well, Gav?
Hello, mate. Yeah, late but great. I'm here eventually. Apologies for my lateness. Yes, and it's nothing to do with, ended up in a drunken stupor after the game because Sunderland sent us wappy or anything. I'm just, I'm here. So yes, thank you very much.
Yes, and just bring you in on that point. I was just asking Phil about the window closing an hour before our kickoff because I imagine, like I said, Pep and Arteta wouldn't really stand for that, would they? They'd go off it if they had a game an hour after the window closed.
It's berserk, really. I mean, it makes you glad that we've got such a finely tuned operation at Sunderland that we've actually got people like Christian Speakman and Florian Gasolfi and the owner who handle all of those things. And I think Regis Labris made that pretty clear when he spoke to the press, didn't he? He's not really bothered about these things. He says more than once that it's not his job, and we've got the pros off the pitch to deal with all of that. But it's less than ideal for preparations for games. I mean, even if you think of somebody like Lutzel Hertrauder, who the day before the game looked set to leave for Liverpool, and it all fell through, and then he's got to play his part in this game, but his focus isn't fully on the game, and I just get really irritated by that. And that's partly, the authorities that decide to have transfer windows and all the other stuff, but also TV companies moving games. It's just, I know it's part and parcel of being in the Premier League, but it shouldn't be, and it doesn't have to be. And yeah, I was a bit pissed off with that, but thankfully it didn't really matter and it didn't affect our performance. But in the case of somebody like Hertrauder, he possibly would have started that game, but they maybe thought, actually, is his head in the right place? All because of transfer windows. So yeah, frustrating.
Yeah, because potentially it could have happened, a couple of hours before kickoff. Liverpool might have come in and we might have put sheets in or whatever. But let's start with that one, Phil, with the transfer sagas that went on. The Hertrauder, however you say it. I'm sure there's a funny song in there somewhere, I'm sure. But that was a saga that went on, Phil. And I don't know, with the contacts you had, how did you see it? Because there's been a lot of rumours going around, whether it was the club who stopped it, whether the player didn't prefer the move, whether he thought he'd get more first-team football at Sunderland than Liverpool, or whether it was more of a pathway. I mean, how did you see it all playing out?
Yeah, my initial thought kind of midway through Sunday was I felt it would probably happen. I think it's an unbelievable opportunity really for Hertrauder in a World Cup year to go and play at Liverpool, potentially Champions League football, a manager he trusts. And this kind of weird thing where he's a really important player for Sunderland, but he also doesn't have a position in the kind of the starting 11, I think my feeling was that if Sunderland could get somebody in to replace him, then it would probably happen. I don't think it's a case of I think sometimes when these things happen, it's a very things get presented in extreme ways, don't they? I think Hertrauder would have been quite keen on the move. I don't think he was demanding that he was let go. Do you know what I mean? But I think from Sunderland's perspective, how do you replace a guy who is very, very good in 4 different positions in 24 hours? Well, it's just incredibly difficult, isn't it? And I think that ultimately, while I think Sunderland kind of understood initially that this was a really good opportunity for him, it reached a point where it was, look, we cannot replace you at this short notice, and this is going to be potentially really detrimental to our season. So I think credit to Hertroide, the fact that he was in the squad last night tells you that he handled that decision pretty well. I thought he looked pretty good when he came on. I know we were winning 3-0, so it's not like the hardest task to come on in that scenario. But yeah, I think it was one that I, for a good while, thought was going to happen. But I think ultimately it was just impossible for Sunderland to replace a guy of that quality and that versatility at such short notice.
Yeah, to be fair, we looked like the Harlem Globetrotters against the Burnley side. To be fair, we were spinning the ball on our nose and they were just watching us and things like that.
It's true, but it would have been the easiest thing in the world to just say, "Oh, look, it's been a tricky weekend. Don't miss this game. We'll come back in on Wednesday or whenever and kind of get around the table and get things sorted." And I think the fact that he was involved tells you that there's probably no kind of major drama there. And I think it's important because if he'd gone, Sunderland, I think, would have been vulnerable to injuries in a couple of positions, really. And I think having him in the squad just makes you feel very, quite relaxed about the rest of the campaign. So, I think it's ended up with a pretty good outcome for Sunderland. That.
Yeah. Well, let's move on to the two really big ones because, Gav, we've been talking all the window. I mean, the talk has been about those attacking positions, especially those wide positions. And Simon Adingra moved to Monaco, and we very quickly made a move for Ecuador winger Nilson Angulo. Hopefully I've got that right. From Anderlecht, deal worth around 17.5 million, 22 years old. He signed a 4.5-year contract with the option of a further year. But, people were crying out for that, and Adingra hasn't really established himself. He's had plenty of opportunities, I'd suggest. Hasn't quite cut it, and we've managed to move quickly to move him on and get someone in.
Yeah, I think Adingra's opportunity was during that period when the AFCON was going on, and he didn't get called up by the Ivory Coast, but Talby did, Traore did, and those starting berths on the wings were up for grabs, and he just didn't take the chance, really. I know he scored a lovely goal against Leeds. That came from a great assist from Granit Xhaka, of course, but other than that, did nothing of note. And to be honest, I look at him and I mean, the recruitment team have got an awful lot right at Sunderland, but I look at him and I just don't see how he really fits the way we play anyways. I think he's, Reggie Slibris likes the wide players to be very hard-working and defensively sound. He likes them to be quite aggressive as well. And I just don't think that's Adingra, and maybe a move abroad will suit him. I mean, I have mentioned this a few times, but if you go back and the listeners can do this, I did a podcast when he signed for us with a Brighton fan, and the way he described Simon Adingra was what we eventually saw from him. Really, he was very frustrated with Adingra in that he just, it didn't seem to kick on at Brighton, and would often frustrate you by trying to do the same thing too often in games and getting caught out by defenders because it was predictable. We probably saw that version of Adingra. We didn't see the version we were hoping to get. But that said, I was still pretty hopeful that he would come good. My sort of headspace going into the end of the window was, well, we spent a lot of money on these wingers. We've got to give them opportunities. We can't just say, well, we need to just replace them after 5 months. We need to actually stick by some of these players and give them chances. But obviously, I think the club's mind was made up. And if they've sensed an opportunity there, it's a good move for him. He gets to go there. We get £1 million out of it for the loan. I imagine they're taking up his wages end of the season. If he does well, there's an option to buy there. We've went out and signed a lad they've obviously been tracking and clearly like and think is better than Adingra. So it's all worked out, hasn't it, really? I mean, this lad we haven't seen play before, Nilson Angulo, but from what I've read and what I've seen, has been described as the best winger in the Jupiler League this season, which, if that's the case, then you're getting somebody on form. That can only be a good thing in the second half of the season. So, yeah, we wish Adingra well, but I think it's probably fair to say it just hasn't really worked for him.
Yeah. Yeah, and my history of supporting Sunderland, Phil, goes on for longer than I can remember, but I don't think I've remembered a time when we've been so, you want to say, ruthless and efficient at the same time in the transfer market, because Simon Adingra didn't cut it, and then he's out. We found him a move to Monaco, and we bring someone straight in for 17.5 million, which is just bizarre for Sunderland now, where we're spending 17.5 million and not thinking anything of it. Like, it's just routine now that we're spending almost 20 million. But yeah, just absolutely ruthless that we've done that. And of course, we could have the scenario where Nilsson is crossing for Wilson, which is of course great for you journalists. Headlines writing itself already. But yeah, Sunderland being quick in the market again.
Yeah, and it cuts both ways, doesn't it? It's a World Cup year. Adingra hasn't got time to waste. Adingra hasn't got time to be sat on the bench coming in and out the side. He's got 3-4 months to play well and get himself in that squad. So I think it's kind of mutually beneficial in that sense. It's just feels very like on brand for Sunderland at the moment. And we're going into the deadline day thinking maybe a bit of experience cover on the right wing, maybe a bit of experience cover in centre midfield. And Sunderland are like, should we just sign another dribbly left winger? Just add him to our rank of 11 that we've got at the club. But yeah, I agree with Gav in the sense that at times I was a little bit frustrated with Adingra's lack of game time, purely because you're looking at a team that struggles to create and that struggles to like create loads of chances, and you're looking at a guy who we have seen has the quality to do that. But I agree with Gav, he never felt like a Lebris winger. Like, Lebris wingers just run and run and run, don't they? And they're so combative and they're so tenacious. And I just think Adingra never quite looked like the right fit. So I think it's just a little bit of a rare miss from the recruitment team. And, I'm not going to sit here and say I've watched hours of Nilsson Angulo, because I haven't. But the research I've done on him, when you look at his stats, like, his off-the-ball numbers are absolutely through the roof. Interceptions, tackles, duels won, distance covered. Like, he gets through an awful lot of work. And we've seen that, like, obviously the Premier League's a big jump from the Belgian league, but we've seen from Siddiqui that it obviously is a league that kind of translates quite well in terms of style of play. So, impossible to kind of call that one, but I do think the Adingra thing is just, it strikes me that Sunderland have seen someone that they just absolutely loved and they've decided to kind of take that risk and let Adingra go and bring him in. So I'm really excited to see how he plays. I think, as I say, I obviously I'm not an expert on him, but from the research I've done, he looks like a Lebris winger, if that makes sense. So maybe this is kind of a bit of a sensible reshuffle.
Yeah. Well, just staying with you, Phil, just quickly, because I was slightly surprised that because that deal was done and the Tarby deal was done earlier in the window, that Remain Mundell maybe didn't push for a move towards the end of the window, even to go out on loan. But he got on from the bench, as we'll come on to in the game, and clearly Regis Lebris rates him and wants to give him game time.
Yeah, he's been really consistent with that from day one, in terms of even when he was injured, talking about, he was a player that he really felt could cut it at Premier League level. I think his long-term future is clearly a bit uncertain. That's not me creating a big drama of it, but the fact that there's been all these links in the January window tells you that his future is a bit uncertain, and he's got pretty ferocious competition there, hasn't he? I think the Mundell one was always unlikely, because the Adingra one, you've obviously made a massive investment there, and you've got to think about how you can kind of recoup that investment. And if you get the opportunity for him to potentially go and play at Monaco and basically get your money back in the summer, I think that's one that, like, pragmatically you've got to pursue. And Sunderland weren't sure whether they were going to get the Angulo deal over the line. So if you potentially have Mundell and Adingra with one foot out the door, and then you don't get a winger in, leaves you in a really difficult position, didn't it? So I just felt like the pieces of the jigsaw, if you like, were never quite in place for Mundell to go here. And look, like, Angulo, he's not on Weir's side yet, so he's not going to come straight into the starting 11 at Arsenal, is he? I wouldn't have thought. So there is still going to be opportunities for Mundell over the next couple of weeks, and yeah, it's up to him to take it. I definitely think Lebris wants to give him the opportunities to prove himself, but as you've just mentioned, like, it is absolutely ruthless, in the Premier League, and I don't think there's any doubt that at the moment Mundell's long-term future is a bit uncertain, but I really don't think it's going to be one where he suddenly disappears now because we've brought a left winger in. I absolutely think there's going to be opportunities for him over the next few weeks. But he's going to have to come up with goals and assists, isn't he? That's that's the nature of where we are now as a football club.
Yeah, that's it. And just on the topic of people leaving the club, Gav, Leo Hjelde went out on loan to Sheffield United. He was their biggest loan deal of the day, of course, ahead of Calvin Phillips. But Oshish went to Schalke, which was maybe a little bit of a surprise. And Patrick Roberts made his move to Birmingham permanent. So no real surprises there. And I think you've said before, I think in a previous pod, maybe on the preview, that window seem to focus a lot on trimming the fat of the squad.
Yeah, we've lost a lot of players, haven't we? Which has probably been needed because the scale of the investment over not just over the summer, but now, but mainly over the summer, has meant a lot of the bodies we had in the door were probably players who were never going to get a chance, really. And you mentioned the word ruthless before. That's exactly what it's been. It's been absolutely ruthless, but necessary, because you can't just have loads and loads of players hanging about the squad and bloating the wage bill and just, and people are unhappy when they're not playing. That's the other thing. It doesn't matter what level of footballer you are. If you're not playing games, you're not going to be happy, and it's just not a nice thing for the club to keep people around who really want to just be playing football. So, I mean, I was looking at it and kind of mapped the squad out, and there's only really Paveda and Barr that we struggle to get rid of, and maybe there's going to be an opportunity to get rid of them, tear up the deals. I don't know, but I mean, as far as the window's concerned, they're still at the club. And then, other than that, really, maybe Harrison Jones might have got a loan if he hadn't have picked up an injury playing for the 21s last week. Abdullahi was being linked with a loan to Burton, I think, which never happened. So he's another one that's been injured and maybe didn't get his chance to go elsewhere. But otherwise, we've done a really, really good job of getting people out the door. I mean, just in the window in general, Matete went to MK Dons on a permanent basis. Ben Middlemass went to Swindon. Joe Anderson went to Barrow. Blondie went to Boulogne in France. You mentioned Oshish and Roberts going. The Oshish deal was really important to how the day panned out, obviously, because without him going to Schalke, we couldn't then free up a loan spot to allow Adingra to leave, which then impacted on the Angulo deal. So Oshish was actually a pretty big departure, despite the fact he's not been at the football club for a long while now. And then in terms of loans, I mean, Pembele went, Trey Ogunsui went, Jake Waters, Timur Tutierov, who's had a good start to life at Exeter, Isaac Allen, Tom Lavery, Ethan Moore, Arthur Masuaku, Adji Elise, Anthony Patterson, Simon Adingra, and Leo Helder. That's a lot of players that have gone out the door. But we started out the month, didn't we, saying that this was entirely necessary, that these players had to be given chances to go elsewhere. So fair play at the club. I think we've done a really brilliant job of trimming the squad, and now it looks in fantastic shape. I mean, we've got 3 senior goalkeepers. We've got, basically, if you look at it, we've got 2 players for every position. You can make an argument about Shaka's role. Maybe we don't have anybody to cover that. So if I was being very, very picky, I may have wanted somebody to come in that position, like a younger understudy, but like in terms of getting players out the door, Chris, we've done an outstanding job, and you've got to give credit to the club, because I think that's a big thing a lot of clubs don't get right, is you've kind of got a duty to players who you haven't got plans for to do right by them. And, Dan Neil and Patterson are probably the big 2, in my opinion, where those lads, and Patrick Roberts actually, those lads got us promoted, they got us to this point. It was the club's duty to do right by them, help them get good moves, and we've done that.
Yeah, there was some names that you haven't heard for quite a while in there with leaving the club. But just the last one on the transfer window, Phil, the goalkeeper position, which Gav mentioned, because Marcus Elbow came in, 22-year-old, about 3 million from Malmo. Of course, Anthony Patterson went on loan to Millwall. How do you see all this playing out? Because we're getting a 22-year-old highly rated player in from Sweden. Of course, Anthony Patterson's got to come back. And then we've got Matty Young, who I'm sure the club have got a pathway for, and they've got everything planned out for the next few years, and telling him that at this point, this is when he's going to be looking to be pushing for first team squads and things like that. So how do you see that playing out?
Yeah, I think it's first and foremost, it is a good position to be in, to have 4 very talented young goalkeepers at your football club. I think the Patterson one, the market in terms of like a permanent sale was just never going to be there in a January window, and I think what we've seen here is a really kind of solid, pragmatic decision. He's going to work with a manager that he knows, a team that's doing well, realistic shot of promotion. There's not really any downside there either for Patterson or for Sunderland. Sitting here right now, I would expect probably like a permanent departure in the summer. I think that's probably just the best thing kind of for everyone at the stage they'll be then. I think Matty Young you're absolutely right to bring him up, because Sunderland definitely think this is a guy who could be their number 1 in the years to come. And you only have to look really at the list of goalkeepers who've played as much AFL football as he has at his age. It is an elite select group. But I think he's probably still a couple of years away from, I think, being Premier League ready. So I wouldn't be surprised if next year they were looking at either a top-end League One loan or maybe even like a Championship loan. Sounds kind of ridiculous, but I wouldn't completely rule it out with the level that he's already played at and the experience he's got. So I think realistically, you're probably looking ideally next year with Ruffs and Elborg being your two. And then you just kind of see what happens. I mean, the dream scenario really is that if and when, which if we're honest, if he keeps going as he is, Ruffs gets a massive move somewhere in a couple of years' time, you've maybe got Young and Elborg, and one of them you think is in a position there where there could be a number one. And obviously, that's kind of ideal scenario. So I think this is something we're going to see a lot more of. I know it's like a cliche, but Brighton do it exceptionally well, where they get themselves in a position where they're able financially to invest in young players when they're available, and it stops them wasting money trying to replace players when they go. So, yeah, I think it's hard at the moment to see, I think, Patterson having a long-term future here. I think that's just the reality of it. And hopefully he has a really good 6 months at Millwall, which means that, Sunderland get good offers from him in the summer and he gets really good kind of offers for the kind of next stage of his career as well.
Yeah. So after all that, I think we're ready to get into the football now. But before that, we'll take a quick break. So we'll be back very soon. And welcome back to Howie the podcast. And after all that transfer talk, we're ready to get into the game. Now, we'll start off with the team, Gav, because we talked to Ian Murtagh the other week and he expected wholesale changes, but it was just Mayenda Mundle who came out of the side, and Diarra and Talby. But no real surprises, although I think it was Gary Bennett before the game expected Geertruida to be in that midfield.
No surprises, and I think you can safely say sat here now with the benefit of hindsight that he got it absolutely spot on. And the big call for me wasn't bringing in Talby or Diarra. I kind of expected those calls, particularly knowing Adingra was on his way out, and just the fact that Diarra had played quite well when he came on against West Ham, kind of expected both of those changes. But the big call was Trey Hume, because that was a real contentious one, particularly after West Ham. A lot of fans kind of weren't happy with how he played and rubbished the idea that he could play in midfield, but the manager stuck by him. Of course, he was the captain. And to be fair to Trey Hume, I thought he was absolutely outstanding, so the call was vindicated. And it's interesting to me, maybe this is something to look into a bit further, but it's interesting to me that actually when Hume's played that position at home, he's always played well there. I think, every time I think back to when Hume's popped up on the right-hand side of the pitch, he's done pretty well. I think maybe he's learned from that West Ham game as well, learned that what went right, what went wrong, and clearly took it into this one. But yeah, I thought that was the big call, was whether or not Trey Hume started the game, because you look at that bench and you mentioned Geertruida. I think maybe the team selection could have been different had that carry on not gone on over the weekend with Liverpool. Mundle would have been in with a shout to play. Rigg even has played on that right-hand side. Mayenda has. He hasn't tried Isidore and Brobby together yet, which is a strange one, but it would have been an option. So we even with players being missing, we did have options. But I was more than happy with the team when I saw it, and I just thought it looked like a team that, because I listened to your chat on the opposition preview, Chris, with the Burnley fan, and he said, like, there's no two ways about it. We will just come and sit back. That's all we do. We don't even try to take the game to teams. We sit back and we try and counter-attack. And that's not even particularly successful because we don't have pace. So when I heard that, I was like, well, we've got to pick a team that's going to come on to Burnley and try and play football. And I think that's what we did. And yeah, got it absolutely spot on, in my opinion.
Yep. I mean, it's a strange one, isn't it, Phil? Because when you look at it, you think, right, we're at home. And actually what he does is bring two attacking players out of the side. But yet we end up looking more attacking. And the other aspect as well, that away to West Ham, you've got Mayenda, who's trying to play off Brian Brobby. But when you've got Le Fee there, when we're out of possession, he gets involved in trying to win the ball back, which Mayenda doesn't do. So it's almost that, when you look at how we played at West Ham, it looks crazy looking back. And the fact that, again, those two attacking players came out, yet we looked more positive against Burnley.
It's funny, isn't it? Just the extent to which as well early goals massively change games, right? Because I actually thought we came out on the front foot against West Ham, and if you manage to score early, maybe the things are different. And there was a part of me in the early stages last night that did think, if this, because there were times where Burnley's defence had a lot of the ball and weren't doing anything with it, but you do think if this goes on for an hour, will we all feel a little bit edgy and a little bit frustrated that Sunderland aren't more on the front foot, and to score such a good goal early on, I just think changed the whole dynamic of the game, and Sunderland just grew into it from there. I think the one thing that you would have to say about the selection in terms of what was absolutely right about it is with that Hume role, what that then allows Mukele to do going forward is just a bit of a game changer, isn't it? Because those overlapping runs he makes, his delivery from the wide areas, just our open play threat has gone through the roof really since he started doing that. And I think, we are ultimately a newly promoted side, and you've got to have that balance in your team. And if having Hume in front of him gives you that little bit of extra protection and allows Mukele to play like, the right back that he is, then especially at home, as Gav said, I'm more than happy with that, because that guy I thought he was unbelievable last night. Wasn't constantly getting forward, but every time he did, he made something happen. So I think, I think that's worked out, especially at home. I think that's worked out really, really nicely.
Yeah, well, we'll definitely come back onto that when we get into the second goal. But let's cover the first one, which was actually an own goal in the end, Gav. But it actually came from Burnley actually opening us up on our right hand side actually and getting in behind, and I thought it was a bit of a danger sign until a minute later that we kept the ball, 13 passes involving 8 players, ended up with Trey Hume playing it into Brian Brobby, fantastically off to Diarra, and the run from Diarra as well, which I'm sure we'll get into. But then he got into the box, it was slightly held up, and then he just kind of took a shot in the right direction, deflected, went in the end. But it was just that movement, wasn't it, which we seem to have been missing for quite some time.
Oh, it was. Do you know when you say that? But actually, if you look at a lot of the recent goals that we've scored, they've all been that kind of goal, like building it up and playing into midfield out wide, across the box. I think we've actually we seem to have nailed that to a degree certainly in recent games. It was nice to see though, because not often enough do we see it. Like, I think while we're capable of it, it would be nice to see us do it a little bit more often. And I don't care how scruffy the goal was, I'm still giving that one to Diarra. I know they gave it as an own goal, but he still got himself in that position to get the shot away. But it was just a nice move, wasn't it? I think when you're a fan and you sit back and you see a goal just built up like that, it's just great, isn't it? We played some absolutely tremendous stuff at times during the game, but I loved that goal. I just did. Even though the finish was scruffy, it was just nice. It was a nice goal. That little flick from Broby in the build-up is just why you've got a player like that in your team, isn't it? Like, he's so different to everybody else in the Premier League in that position. There's nobody else. I can't think of anyone in the top flight other than Brian Broby who was capable of that sort of hold-up play. There's big players, Mateta and the likes of him, but I don't think that they carry themselves the way he does. But yeah, it was just a lovely goal. And Nordy playing his part in the goal, as he has done a lot recently. He's becoming a real threat down that side. I noticed a lot of the people who play fantasy football are absolutely brimming with him, because he's been such a good addition to many teams. £4.5 million signing on fantasy football, and he keeps bagging these assists and getting involved in goals. But yeah, no, I'm delighted with that goal, if I'm honest, Chris, even though it was a scruffy finish.
Well, yeah, but the build-up wasn't scruffy. But it just seems, Phil, that when Brian Brobby gets the ball into feet now, which, in previous weeks we've been seeing it, and he's had to go right back to a centre-half, or he's had to come all the way back with the ball. But this time, he had Diarra running past him. And I remember in pre-season, Diarra really looked like a goal threat. You thought, actually, he might get up to maybe double figures if he does really well this season. And you can see why, that every time the ball was played up to Broby, that he got near him and he made sure he ran beyond him, which, again, I don't think we've seen too much from midfield since he got injured.
No, and I think it's, both goals. I mean, as the first one obviously been taken off him, but both of them a bit of luck, but also a reward for that intent, isn't it? Getting in the right areas. And Labrise was saying to us in the press conference after the game as well, that with Broby it's probably a twofold thing now where his confidence is clearly up, but his teammates now have so much trust in him that he's going to make the ball stick, that he's going to bring them into the game, and they're playing into him earlier. They're sort of using him more because they just know that he's going to create. I thought Broby was outstanding last night. I really, really did. And but both teams, in some ways, were trying to play fairly similar. The difference being, in a large part, that Ballard, I thought, was just completely dominant against Foster, and Broby was completely dominant against his opposite numbers. And I think that's a real, that's real credit, bro, because I think Estev's a really good player. I thought he was magnificent in the Championship last year, and he did really, really struggle last night. So yeah, I think there's a combination of, I think Broby is bringing so much to the team in terms of getting us up the pitch, and then I think if you compare with where we were at the start of the season, where we did brilliantly well, but we were quite set piece dependent, to now have Le Fee and Diarra in the middle of the pitch, what they bring in terms of creativity and a goal threat as well. It's nice to see that you can see where the team is going to improve. Do you know what I mean? People kept talking about Sunderland having a drop off because of the XG and stuff like that. Just kind of at odds with the fact that we could see the team developing, couldn't we? And Enzo being in the middle of the pitch has been such a massive part of that. Yeah, we've had the odd stinker at Brentford and West Ham, but I've always been quite relaxed about that kind of whole stats debate because you can see what the vision is in the long run. And I think slowly but surely we're starting to see that come to fruition a little bit now.
Yeah, well, perfect mention of Enzo Le Fee, which gets us into the second goal, because actually we got a little bit overconfident for a while. Alderete was determined to give Burnley the ball at every opportunity. It seemed during that period between the first and the second goal. But and they didn't have their first touch in our box until the half hour. And it was like a minute later when we scored the second, which definitely was Diarra's goal. Hume pinged the ball into the centre of the pitch to Enzo Le Fee. And again, just to emphasise that first touch, took loads of Burnley players out of the game because he feigned to go one way and went the other. And then this is what you talked about with that right-hand side, Gav, because the ball went pinged out to Michele because Che Hume had tucked into that right-back position. And then Michele cut it across the box and it fell nicely in the end to Diarra. And luckily for us, Dubravka was absolutely crap and his hands were made of crisps and it went in. But yeah, it was good timing as well on that half hour because I did think that we were kind of getting sloppy just because Burnley were absolutely no threat.
Yeah, another scruffy goal, but another one I'm not bothered about. But some of the football in the build-up again was lovely. You talk about that ball from Enzo out to Nordy, just quality. By the way, Enzo Le Fee, I mean, Phil, I know you're his biggest fan, but I must be close second. He's just so good, and that game was perfect for him because he had all the time in the world. Their two centre mids didn't want to try and press us at all, so Enzo just picked the ball up where he wanted and done what he wanted, and it was exemplified in that goal with the ball out in Nordy. But yeah, I mean, a great ball across again. Yeah, there's a touch of fortune because it flicks up off the Burnley player to fall to Diarra. But you mentioned Dubravka. That was god awful, wasn't it? Straight at him. I don't understand. He's palmed it into his own net. Like when he stood in the middle of the goal. Fair enough if you're going to palm it round, like you're diving down to the corner and you're turning the ball around and putting it out. But he's in the middle of the goal and tries to palm it round and it just palms it straight in the back of his own goal. I'm sure he'll have his own excuses to why that happened. And yeah, players make mistakes and stuff, but Diarra got his shot away. And you know what it is? Even though both the goals were scruffy, it shows real confidence that he's come back from AFCON. I mean, I don't know if they picked it up on the TV cameras or not, Chris, but when they were reading the teams out, the club made a big song and dance out of him for winning AFCON. So they're reading through the team names, the player names on the team sheet, sorry. And when they got to Diarra, he was announced as our African Cup of Nations winner. And there was a big graphic on the screen of him with his trophy and stuff. I thought it was a lovely touch. And if he wasn't already motivated enough, I bet he was after that. I bet he was right up for it. And yeah, just again, to go 2-0 up at home is a rare thing for us. We don't seem to do that very often and not often enough. So it was lovely. Yeah, it was when you're mapping out how you want the game to go, that's it. And you just get a couple of early goals, completely kill any enthusiasm they had. And it allowed us to manage the game out from that point.
Well, yeah, now I know why Talby was so motivated. Haven't seen those graphics of Diarra being AFCON winner. But yeah, it was the first time this season that we've led by 2 goals at half time, Phil. And just going on that goal, let's just go on Enzo Le Fee, because in that role where he's supposed to be, well, technically up top, I suppose, or playing off Brian Brobby, he's just everywhere. I mean, the amount of times he picked the ball up in front of the back four and just picked out a pass and got us going. I mean, it's just great to see him play when he's got that freedom and he can just float like that.
Yeah, I think that's maybe where Diarra's return could be massive for him as well, because I feel like Diarra's sort of instinct, as we've seen last night, is to run forward, isn't it, and get close to the striker. And I wonder if that'll allow Enzo to play a little bit deeper than he has over the last month or so, where he's done brilliantly. But I feel like because he's essentially been playing as the second striker, it's not always easy for him to come deep and kind of dictate the game a bit. And maybe Diarra taking on some of that attacking responsibilities will allow Enzo to float a bit, and that's a really exciting kind of prospect, because that was the role he played when he broke through for Lebris at Lorient. He didn't play as a 10 really, he played as an 8. Someone who had loads and loads of touches throughout the game. So it's exciting to think that we probably haven't even kind of seen the best of Enzo yet. And yeah, I just love watching him play. One of my favourite ever Sunderland players. It's like my Sunderland dream. It's like having Steed back. He can play for 90 minutes, which is just it's like such a great state of affairs. Yeah, he's just, for me, Enzo is just such a Sunderland player. He's got quality, but never shakes a challenge. Runs himself into the ground. I just think when Sunderland appoint people to their recruitment team and stuff, he's just kind of what I want to show them. This is what you need to go out and sign, because for me, it's just everything I want to see in a Sunderland player. And yeah, I do think there's a lot of players I think could potentially benefit from Diarra's return, and I think Enzo really could be one of them. I think the balance, is lovely, and really interesting discussion for you guys in a couple of weeks' time when Jack is fit again, isn't there? In terms of the makeup of that side, but I don't know if we've got enough hours in the day to get there, but that's going to be a nice position to be in.
Yeah. Well, that's it. Well, I hadn't thought that, but if we'd nicked Steed's fags, he would have turned in Enzo Le Fee. I hadn't thought about it like that, but there you go. But second half was a strange atmosphere because it was so comfortable, Gav, but it kind of got busy again just after the hour mark. And I just wanted to mention this because I don't know whether it's a sign of how comfortable we were in the game or just how brilliant or, how much Dan Bollard and Trey Hume have improved this season. But there was a chance created just after the hour mark where Dan Bollard pinged a 50-yard diagonal ball out wide to Hume, and Hume killed it with one touch. Absolutely brilliant. And then it went into Diarra, and I thought he might have took a shot to get his hat-trick, but he ended up playing it at Brian Brobby, who then turned and shot. And actually the keeper made a decent save, to be fair, and Michaela with a follow-up. But it's just worth talking about Dan Bollard and Trey Hume, because obviously survivors from the Championships season, and they're shown why, because to play 50-yard balls like that and to kill it and then end up creating a chance, I mean, they completely deserve their chance in the Premier League, and they're taking advantage of that, because every week they look better and better.
Yeah, and just on that chance, by the way, if people watch it back, that is really good what Brobby does. The way he gets the shot away, because the ball's actually kind of escaping, but because his legs are that strong, he still manages to dig the ball with a lot of power towards that bottom corner. So I just want to give him a little bit of praise for that. But yeah, Ballard and Hume are just, I mean, Phil says, about Enzo being everything he wants in a Sunderland player, but you could say the same about those two as well. I mean, particularly Dan Ballard, in my opinion, I love him. And the rate of progression from him has been ridiculous. Like, nobody needs me to explain that to them, but the way that he has gone from not being guaranteed to start games for us in the Championship to me being easily and not talked about enough as one of the best central defenders in the Premier League at the minute. Like, my mate was saying last night, if he hadn't declared for Northern Ireland all those years ago, Ballard would be probably going to the World Cup with England. Like, that's genuinely how well he's playing. But he was unbelievable last night. I mean, he was just everything he's been all season, really, just completely dominant. And the ability on the ball has always been something I think that's let him down until this season, and he's really improved. You've got to say, though, when you're training around better players, a better standard of player every day, you're going to improve, aren't you? So, and you're playing at a higher level. It's pushing you to be a better version of yourself. You are going to get better, and you could say the same for both of them. I think Regis Labrise is such a brilliant coach, but Trey Hume, the lad who arrived at Sunderland from Linfield, is a skinny little right back who'd played like 30 or 40 games in the League of Ireland or whatever it was. For him to then be this sort of Swiss Army knife that can just slot in wherever in the Premier League is unbelievable. Again, just brilliant. Like, wherever we need him, he can play. If we need him at left back, he goes over at left back. We need him at right back, he goes over at right back. If we need him to play on the wing, he can. If we need him to fill in as an orthodox central mid, he can. If we need him to play as a third defender in a back three, he can. He's just such a talented boy and trusted by the manager. And that touch you're talking about, was gorgeous, wasn't it? If Enzo had done that, we'd be probably getting highlight reels of it on Twitter and stuff, wouldn't we? But it was a lovely first touch. And again, I just want to say this again, Chris. I think because he played so badly at West Ham, the response was fantastic, and the manager paid him back, because it would have been very easy to drop him, wouldn't it? Would have been very easy to bring someone else in, say sorry, Trey, blah blah blah. But no, he started, he played well, and I'm over the moon he did.
Yeah, and I think it was Mickey Gray who still thinks or still thought that Dan Ballard had a chance of making the England World Cup squad, wasn't it? But a couple of minutes after that, Phil, a strange incident, but it kind of woke everyone up, including the Sunderland fans and the team. Dubravka with Hume, there was absolutely nothing in it, and he just insisted that Hume had done something wrong and went for him, but it was almost the wrong thing to do, because Burnley were only 2 down at that time and they've got a chance of getting back into it, and he decides to wake the whole stadium up.
Yeah, it was odd, wasn't it? The only thing I can think of is maybe something's been said, when the two of them were kind of grappling a little bit. That's the only kind of thing I can think of. Whether Hume's rattled him a little bit, I honestly don't know. But yeah, it was just I thought Burnley's performance was just really strange, because they had the ball 5, 10, 15 minutes at the start of the second half. Couldn't really do anything with it, and it was almost like they were just like, oh well, not happening for us tonight. And that was probably one of the most interesting things about the game, was like the last 20, 25 minutes, we were the team that looked like we were going to score more, didn't we, rather than Burnley really even looking like they were threatening. I think that's such a good sort of, it's pretty damning for Burnley, but it's a pretty good reflection of where we're at as a team. So yeah, it was as you say, it was a strange incident that and worked in Sunderland's favour. But yeah, I'd be interested to know if Trey had managed to get under his skin there somehow, because as you say, there didn't actually appear to be anything to it, did there?
Yeah. Well, I'll stick with you, Phil, for the third goal, because actually it came from our attack down the right-hand side, where McKaylee was really aggressive in winning the ball. Got to the ball first, got to the byline, crossed for Brian Brobby, who I thought was going to then get his goal that he deserved, but he missed it, and it went out to the left. It ended up at Talby. And the Burnley players just stood back and watched him. And he said, all right, then, well, I'll have a pop. And he did from, 25 yards? But absolutely brilliant finish. But the confidence in him to come back from AFCON, I think he looks like he's just puffed his chest out a little bit coming back from AFCON, Phil. I think Talby's got a bit more about him now. He's grown into this season. And to even have the guts to do something like that, even at 2-0, to have the confidence to do that. Because, if he skies it, he's got to look at his teammates and put his hand up or anything. But, when it goes in off the bar like that, it looks pretty special, doesn't it?
Yeah, it was a brilliant goal, and I think exactly what we've been crying out for, isn't it? Is for a few weeks, is for a winger to do something like that, to kind of put their hand up and kind of show that they're ready for a run. Not hugely surprised, because I think even before AFCON, I thought when he played off the left, I thought it looked more natural for Talby. I thought at times earlier in the season when he played on the right, it looked like he was just taking a little bit too long with everything, and maybe he was a little bit indecisive. When he plays off the left, it just seems so much more instinctive, and everything seems to happen quicker for him. And I think the goal, as you say, kind of embodies that. Just steps in field straight away, only one thought in his head: cut inside, shoot. And it shows you the quality he's got, and we've seen that on a few times this season. So I think again, it's like we've spoken a lot about the wingers, and understandably so, because it has been a weakness for Sunderland this season. But I know the deal didn't happen, but I was looking last night, when Crystal Palace were potentially signing McNeil for, I think, over 20 million. And I think it does remind you that the money that Sunderland have spent on their wingers, and it's going to be exactly the same with Nilsson Angulo, it seems like a lot of money to us because we've spent 8 years out of the Premier League. These aren't huge fees for Premier League wingers. We're not buying the end product. We're not buying players who are going to be sure things from day one. It is going to take time. And I think, as you said, we can all see the kind of the growth in Talby even over a short period of time. But you can see the quality. And as I said, I think at times he's going to have to play off the right, isn't he? Because it's just an area of the pitch where we don't have loads of options. But to me, everything just looks quicker, more natural, more instinctive when he plays off the left. And I think the goal kind of highlighted that.
Yeah. It's interesting, go back the summer, Gav, when you talked to a journalist after we signed Talby. And I think he's just looked better and better every time he's played for us. And he's clearly needed minutes to grow into the season. But he was full of flicks and tricks, and he got the cherry on the cake with the goal. But yeah, he's just grown into this team, isn't he?
Yeah, I'm a really big fan of Shemson Talby. I think he's a really talented young player, yes, but he's actually quite mature in his play. And I know Phil said there about him looking more instinctive when he comes in off the left. I completely agree with that. I think for any wide player with pace, if you're playing on the opposite side of the foot you use, you tend to look a little bit more comfortable. But I think as well, tactically, he's just very aware, very switched on. He's got that balance right between taking risks and being sensible with the ball, which you don't get very often with wingers. Never mind relatively immature wingers. He's a young lad. So that's probably something that weighs heavily in his favour, because we were talking earlier about Angulo and the fact that Lebris is a typical Lebris winger, works hard and is defensively sound. Well, Shemson Talby is all of that. So I'm looking forward to his second half of the season. Given some of the goals he's scored for us, you think about that one yesterday, scoring at Anfield, scoring the winner at Stamford Bridge. He's come up with big moments in games, and that is a big tick in the box, particularly in a squad where we haven't got loads of players who take risks, really. We haven't got loads of players who've shown in big games that they can come up with those moments, but he has. So I'm over the moon that he's sort of getting his chance, and he'll probably be buoyed by the fact that we've just gone and signed another left winger to add competition. Somebody he's probably very aware of, because similar ages, came up through the Belgian league, so it'll be somebody who he knows, and he knows his qualities and things. And he's basically got a head start on this lad, hasn't he? He's like, well, this is my shirt to lose now. So hopefully that's motivating him. And you mentioned AFCON, Chris. I mean, it's a bit of a disgrace, really, when you look at how many minutes he actually got in the tournament, and then you look how talented he is. Because I watched Morocco in that final, and they were crying out for somebody like him. And more fool them, really. He's probably come back from that tournament thinking, well, feeling disappointed and a little bit deflated he didn't get more of a chance. And if that was me, I would be inspired to then kick on a bit at Sunderland this season, and particularly ahead of the World Cup, because he's not guaranteed minutes at the World Cup. But if he has a really good second half of the season in the Premier League where he's scoring goals and playing every week, he's going to make it impossible for the Morocco manager to ignore him. So, yeah, I think it's just pleasing all around, isn't it? And on the goal, it doesn't get much better when it goes in off the bar. Like I love those. Just my favourite types of goals. Long ranger, in off the bar. We went absolutely berserk in the stands. People flying all over the place, just head in their hands. Couldn't believe how good the goal was. And more of the same, please, Shemsden, if you can.
Yep, absolutely. I mean, again, 3-0, and we've talked about that Burnley side, Phil, but a 3-0 win, really routine to the point where, it was over before it almost began. And how much can we take from that? Because it was a really professional performance. I wouldn't say we kind of peppered Burnley with kind of chances, and we didn't kind of miss a load. I don't think it looked like a 5 or 6-0 because we weren't really pushing. But Burnley were absolutely awful. So what do we take out of this win?
Yeah, I think it probably is one of those where it was more about Burnley probably than Sunderland in terms of just how poor they were on the night. And, clearly a team that struggled this season, and from the kind of the post-match stuff I was listening to from their end after the game, well below even what they've kind of come up with this season when they've struggled. So I do think it was one of those where sometimes you catch a team on a good day, to go and get the win. Brentford and West Ham will probably feel the same about us, the performances we produced there. But I think the thing I take away from it, Sunderland perspective, which is kind of we've referred to a little bit over the course of the hour or so, is like, I feel like the team is developing, and yes, sometimes it's a little bit 2 steps forward, 1 step back, but to score all your goals from open play, to not look like we needed a set piece, a flick on or a second phase to score, I think is really encouraging. I think the team is getting better and better and more dangerous creatively, which, for the first phase of the season, we were all saying, we've got a really good defensive platform. Can we go on and add to that? And, it was never going to happen overnight, but Enzo in the middle, Diarra, Broby, Mukele bombing forward from right back. You can kind of see how we're developing the tools to actually hurt teams as well. And that's what gives me a lot of confidence, not just for the next few weeks, but kind of the next few months and beyond as well. I can feel like I can see where the team is headed, and that's a really reassuring place to be.
Yeah. Just building off what Phil said there, Gav. I mean, look, we all know our home form is just ridiculous this season. That we're still unbeaten in 12 games, won 7 of those. That only Man City and Arsenal have taken more points than us at home. I think they're the only 2 sides who've got the best goal difference, and they're the only ones who've conceded fewer goals than us at home this season. But when you think about it, people talk about creating chances and scoring goals. At home, there's only 4 sides in the Premier League who have scored more goals on their own patch than us, which is actually surprising when you think people say that that's actually maybe one of our issues.
Yeah. I think we probably do need to kind of split the home and away form, because they are very different. We are brilliant at home. We just don't look like losing, really. We've been excellent there. Away from home, we're a very different team. I've actually been, to be honest, I've been a little bit disappointed, particularly recently, just with the way we've gone away and not acquitted ourselves in the way that we know we can. Like, we're a lot better than we show sometimes away from home. So maybe that's why the goal scoring is kind of, it combines the both, doesn't it? So we go away from home. I think we've scored something like 6 goals all season away from home. So yeah, I think that's maybe why it kind of clouds that. But the home form has been absolutely ridiculous, really. Like, and I was a little bit worried going into this game, actually, because I just felt like, oh God, now everyone's making a big deal out of the fact we're the only unbeaten home team. It would be so typically Sunderland to then lose to Burnley, who can't buy a win. But this is a very different Sunderland, and we keep showing that. And it's yet another example of why we need to just get out of that mentality of like typical Sunderland, because typical Sunderland doesn't seem to be a thing anymore. This is a very different Sunderland to the one that we've all grown up supporting. I mean, I saw something like we've picked up 16 points after games we've lost, I think. Maybe that's wrong. I can't remember. Some mad stat, like
18, because we've won 6 games after our 6 defeats.
Yeah, that's the stat I saw. So yeah, I mean, that is ridiculous in itself, isn't it? But it's shown that we've got character. It shows that we respond. The goal scoring, though, just isn't a worry. I mean, I actually think we're going to improve in that regard, because we've got no distractions really now. We haven't got AFCON distracting us. Broby's just hitting these straps. Diarra, who is clearly a more attacking kind of midfielder, is going to add something in that regard. Talby, again, getting his feet under the table and making that left-hand side his own position. We've brought in 2 wingers who are hopefully going to add creativity. So I think the club have done quite well to address it. And with players not only come back from injury, but also Broby becoming that striker which we thought we'd signed in the summer, that, it took a bit of time for him to get bedded in and get fit and stuff, but he's clearly at his peak now. With all that coming together, I think the goal scoring side of things will improve naturally anyways.
Yeah. Well, just on that, Phil, we've only got the league leaders away from home next, and Gav's talked about our away form. We've conceded 6 in the last 2 games away from home, and we haven't won away from home since the 25th of October when we went to Chelsea. But it's bizarre that in a weird way, because of all those things, I'm almost expecting us to come up with a really good game plan and like take it to Arsenal when we go there.
Yeah, it's the toughest game of the season by a mile, isn't it? I think when you look at what Arsenal have done over a period of time now, yeah. At the moment, I'm still probably in a slightly different camp of being slightly scarred by having been at the Brentford and West Ham games and being slightly concerned, to be honest, about this one. But I think the positive is that I think the way of playing, the way to potentially go there and get a result is kind of, it's there for Sunderland. We've seen them do it at Chelsea. I don't think he'll have to change the formation and the setup much from what he's played over the last couple of weeks to kind of settle on something that's worked well away from home at times this season. And hopefully, we do have a lot of players who seem to thrive on the adrenaline of the big games and of the really big atmospheres and the really big grounds. And hopefully the kind of challenge of going away to Arsenal and the kind of jeopardy of it will really kind of bring that intensity that we always see at home and we don't always see away from home. I think there's some players who don't, for whatever reason, seem to be able to bring the same intensity away from home. Maybe being away at Arsenal will demand that and bring that, but that does feel like slightly wishful thinking on my part. It's going to be an unbelievable game. There's absolutely no two ways of getting around that.
Yeah. Well, the law of averages says that we'll go to Arsenal and get beat, and then we'll follow it up with a win against Liverpool. So we might take that. But Phil, just last one from you, because I don't know when we might catch up with you again. Hopefully soon. But it's exciting, isn't it? When you look at the league table, and what is it? We are, let me see, 4 points behind the European place, 5 points behind the Champions League place, and we've almost got nothing to lose now. It's kind of just go for it, enjoy it, and it's just exciting to have that in the run-in for a Premier League season, isn't it?
It's an absolutely lovely position to be in. Yeah, just really looking forward to the games. Really looking forward to seeing how this going. And I think the nice thing is it doesn't feel like, as I said before, like it doesn't feel to me like they're a team that are about to just drop off. I actually think with the energy of Diarra coming in, some players who are clearly getting better week on week. I'm not sitting here saying we're going to storm the Champions League places. I think the table feels quite settled to me now in terms of the teams that have kind of punched their way up to the top over the last couple of months. Often happens over Christmas. But I don't feel like this is a team that is losing momentum badly. I think if anything, it's the opposite. So I'm not sitting here expecting to be applying for my visas for the Conference League or anything. But at the same time, like, you just never know. And I do feel like Sunderland are in a good spot at the moment. So just really excited to see what it all brings. Yeah.
There you go. Well, you heard it here first. Phil says we're going to qualify for Europe and get to the cup final. So that should be a good end to the season. But that's a good place to leave it, I think. It just leaves me to say, actually, first, before we say thank you, Phil, just a quick reminder, Phil, Wednesday night, and they can get tickets on the socials.
Yeah, find me on socials. The link's there. Come down and have a chat with me and Nick tomorrow night at Pop Rex. Be lovely to see anyone who's at a loose end and who fancies it. So yeah, great to see anyone who's around.
Good stuff. So jump on that if you can. But again, just leave me to say thank you very much, Phil. Really, really appreciate your time, mate.
Always a pleasure. Anytime. Thank you for having me.
Good stuff. And Gav, thanks again, mate. You arrived late, but you got here in the end. But we've got loads coming up, haven't we?
Yeah, we've got on this week, dropping tomorrow. Probably going to have a little pod updating us on what we can expect from our new winger, which I'm hoping to get lined up as well. But if people want to go back and listen as well, I did put a bonus pod out yesterday, an interview with a guy called Matt Pedrowski, who is a writer for The Athletic, but also used to be a professional goalkeeper and crucially is a goalkeeper coach at Malmo. And he gave us the lowdown on our new goalkeeper, who I can't remember the name of. That's why I'm trying to avoid saying it. I'm absolutely useless with names. Although I think you called him Marcus earlier in the pod, Chris. So I think, I don't think his name's Marcus, is it? Elborg. Melker Elborg. There we go. Melker Elborg. So you called him Marcus. I don't know his name, but yeah, if anybody wants to listen to somebody talk about him who actually does know quite a lot about him, then make sure you tune into that pod. And also the reaction which dropped last night as well. We've got loads going on.
Yeah, between us, we'll get the right name somewhere, I think. But no, I started listening to that, and it's absolutely brilliant. So I'm looking forward to finishing that off. But brilliant. Thanks again, Gav.
Cheers, mate.
And thanks again, everyone, for listening. As we said, we'll have loads more. And we've got loads more analysis on the Rugby Report website as well of all these signings and all these games. Of course, we'll have all the pods coming every day as usual, building up to the Arsenal game as well. So look out for all of that. But from us, it's bye for now.